Finding your art style isn't about hard work or copying trends or being a fucking feminist about it all. It's about doing what 99% of people are too afraid to do. Let me show you how the best seascape painter of his time, William Turner, used a 30-minute method to find his art style instantly. In the early 19th century, Joseph Malord, William Turner, is one of the rising stars of the British art scene. And in order to solidify his greatness, because Turner wants to become great, he wants to become one of the best artists, but in order to get there, he needs to find an art style. He needs to find something that is instantly recognizable and instantly unique, distinguished, something that will be remembered throughout the ages. Now at that time, one of the trends in the art world is painting seascapes, and the people that are the establishment are painting it in a very realistic, methodological way, like Constable, for example. Very peculiar, realistic, boring way to paint. And Turner doesn't want to do what everybody else is doing. He doesn't want to be a normie about it all. He wants to do something completely different. And so Turner goes at work, because there's this competition coming. And this will be his first competition where he's attacking or competing against the great painters of his time, the pre-Raphaelites. And he's very expressive about it all and makes these expressive seascapes that he believes will stand out in this competition because everybody else is doing the normie shit. So stressed out as he is, he hands over his paintings. Paintings are in the exhibition. The critics come and he's like, his heart is beating in his chest, like, what is going to happen? This is amazing. Look at me, I'm standing here among the big guys. And what happens traumatizes him a little, because everybody starts laughing. They don't actually like his art at all. Constable shows no respect whatsoever. They say that it's rudimentary, beginner, like you can't even see what he's doing. What is he doing? What is he painting? It's not even anything. And so Turner is devastated. He feels the pain, but also at the same time knows that he has to just step up the game, He has to become better. And so he obviously starts working harder and harder and harder. And he comes up with this plan, a 30-minute strategy, an amazing strategy. And he tells to his friend, like, hey, here's what I'm going to do. I need to see what other people don't see. I need to have something that other people don't have. And in order to see what they don't see, I have to look where they don't want to look. They're all doing these seascapes. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to tie myself, or you, my friend, is going to tie myself to a mast of a ship during a storm. So I'm going to be hanging there during this storm and observing the storm, and then I will see something that other painters don't see. And his friend is like, it's absolutely nuts. What are you going to do? This is insane. You are going to risk your life. What if something happens? What if your head hits the ship and then you drown and the whole thing? This is insane. But as your friend, I will do this for you. And so a couple of hours later, or a couple of days, I don't know, Turner is hanging there and he's observing and he's getting seasick and he starts to vomit and he's like, he probably thinks by himself, what the fuck is going on? This is insane. It's like, what am I doing here? As if I'm going to remember this, And so, as it's all over, he quickly makes some sketches. He quickly tries to capture the vibe that he felt in that moment. And later he turns all of those sketches into a painting called Snowstorm, Steamboat Over Harper's Mouth. It's absolutely gorgeous. And Turner understands what is happening. We all know how it goes. As an artist, you sometimes just feel like I did something that I will never be able to replicate again. This was a very powerful moment. And he feels it with this painting. He knows that this is a painting that will write history. And he shows it to everyone. There's just one problem. The critics don't like it at all. They are laughing with him again. They think it's whitewashed, unfinished at best. They think it's crap. Now you have to understand it from the perspective of these critics. These critics are normies. These critics are pawns for the elites. They are designed to solidify the investments of the elites. These critics, they don't think for themselves. What are critics that have spent their entire lives critiquing people afraid of? They are afraid of critique. It's their biggest fear. And so what do these people do that are afraid of critique? They are following the lines. They are fucking normies. They are agreeing with everything that is establishment and then disagreeing with everything that is not establishment, because that is the safest pathway. So these normies don't know anything about art. But there's one normie. It's not a normie at all. One guy named John Ruskin who believes in Turner and sees his greatness. John says the following thing about Turner. One of the very grandest statements of sea motion, mist and light that has ever been put on canvas. Now Turner is of course a little bit devastated by the critique of the critique people, but he keeps on making paintings. And years go by. Nobody remembers any of these loser normie critique people. They do remember John Ruskin, and they obviously remember the paintings of Turner because he made something that endured the teeth of time. And in tying himself to the mast, Turner shows us that greatness belongs to those who have the fucking balls. Now there's only one question left. How are you going to copy paste Turner's strategy so that you can become a famous artist? So that you can have lines of women lining up at the harbor as you are tying yourself to the mast, praying for your safe return because they can't get enough of your mast. Not to mention the millions of dollars that will come your way. Not to mention the millions of views that will come your way. Not to mention the millions of people that will be talking about you and your art style for hundreds and thousands of years to come. How are you going to do that? Well, you have to understand that if you live in a world where everybody, the average normies, are thinking by themselves that they are an amateur photographer or even a professional photographer because they took a picture of their obese fucking chihuahua with their phone at Machu Picchu. In that world, you cannot be a dog photographer anymore. In that world, you cannot just be somebody that takes beautiful, high-level pictures of chihuahuas. No. You have to go above and beyond. You have to tie yourself to the mast. If you live in a world where normies think they are artists because they wrote an amazing prompt on a computer, a prompt that nobody could have ever written because it was such a high level. It's such an amazing prompt. In that world where these people think that they are artists, you cannot just paint a pretty picture anymore. A pretty picture is not enough. You have to tie yourself to the mast. And so, in that world, here's what I would recommend you to do. This is the 30-minute method of Turner, basically. In the upcoming week, challenge yourself to put yourself in an uncomfortable situation that will push your brain in coming up with new ideas. So start by asking yourself the simple question, what is a place that I could put myself in that no one has ever put himself in? And then actually take 10 minutes to answer the question. For example, I once challenged myself to do something artistic with an ESD gun, an electrostatic discharge simulator. And after a while, I figured out how to paint with lightning from the sky as the first human being to ever paint with lightning from the sky, the only human being to ever do that. With patents on my name, then won awards with that, got featured in Dries magazine with that, one of the famous magazines, traveled the world with that, exhibitions, Berlin, London, you name it, And all because I challenged myself to do something creative with this thing that nobody had tried to do something creative with. And during another time, I challenged myself to paint with tennis balls. And then I came up with a completely new way of planting it. It was some kind of performance, not too serious, but it's in those moments that you come up with new things that are interesting. Now, in order to help you find your art style, I have a free PDF where I list all of the ways to find your art style, the building blocks of beauty that you can use to build your own art style. It's free, the link is in the description. Now, if you don't want to push yourself all the way to the end where you tie yourself to the mast of a ship in order to find your art style, I've also wrote down a couple of ways where you can still challenge yourself, just like Turner. Still fuel your creativity by challenging yourself, but not going to the extreme. For example, let me read a couple of things that I wrote down. You could, for example, force yourself to use a different instrument to play music or use a different medium to make art. Can you, for example, make a song or do a drum part using gym equipment only and nothing else? Or you can also challenge yourself by depriving your sensory information by, for example, working in silence for a couple of days, or doing the exact opposite. If you work a lot in silence or a lot in like peaceful environments, then you could work in a train station instead, where everything's chaotic. If you've never done that, this will challenge you and perhaps push you into a new way of thinking. A different type of challenging would be to simply reverse the creative process that you have at this moment. Let's say that you like to plan everything out, everything meticulously planned before you go and paint. Well, you could switch that upside down and just start painting without having a plan. Or the other way, if you always just start painting without having a plan, why don't you plan for a moment now? And so there are so many ways to challenge you to lift your creative spirit up. But, this is the big but, most creatives will stop there. Most creative people will think by themselves, well, if I am creative and I'm making great stuff, then everything is gonna follow automatically. But this is not what is happening. Turner wasn't just making art. No, he was participating in competitions. He was marketing, he was connecting with the critics who were in fact writing about him. And so he was constantly thinking about marketing himself, and he understood the following principle. If you want to see what nobody else sees, you have to be willing to look where nobody else is looking. And so what is happening in the world right now? Well, all of these artists, I asked them, I talked with them, what is your daily routine? And they will tell me, well, I paint and watch YouTube. If that is what you're doing what everybody else is doing. And if you do what everybody else is doing, you will get results that everybody else is getting. And everybody else is poor. Everybody else is poor. And you don't want to be poor. And so you have to challenge yourself in other ways as well. The elites are not watching YouTube all day long and painting. And so what are they doing? What are the rich people doing? Well, the rich people are going to conferences. And so why don't you challenge yourself to go to a conference once or twice a year? The rich people are buying courses. Why don't you challenge yourself to buy a course instead of just watching free content on YouTube all of the time? There's also a section behind the paywall that has usually better information. I do this all of the time. The elites buy books and they listen to books instead of watch Netflix. Why don't you buy a book for a change, etc., etc., etc. And so you challenge whatever it is that you're doing right now with a higher level of effort. This is my new historical accuracy hat. We told the story about Turner and how he developed his art style. He tied himself to the mast. But did he really tie himself to the mast? Is that humanly possible, or is this just a mythological story that is being told? Sure, they show it in the movies. Sure, they talk about it in the books, in the art history books. But did this actually happen? Well, the only reference to this is William Turner saying this himself to John Ruskin in a conversation. And we know that a lot of these artists from that time, they were marketing. They were kind of marketing geniuses as well. And so is it possible that he just made that story up to create something interesting about his own art, to elevate his own art? Like, hey, you look at what I did. I tied myself to this mast during a storm. That's how far I go. That's how much of an amazing artist I am. Is that possible? Yes, that is possible. Is that what happened? We don't know. But either way, it's a very inspiring thing. Let me know what you think about the historical accuracy hat. Now, in order to make this video complete, we have to talk about a different way to find your art style. Because what if you don't have the ability to tie yourself to a mast? What if you're already 90 years old and you just can't do those types of things? Or you don't have the freedom to challenge yourself in that way? There are other ways to find your art style. I've made a video about that, how to find your art style so fast it feels illegal. Link in the description and the end screen. Don't forget the free PDF. That said, get the hell out of here.